When they asked me in Cranberry if I'd be part of this and to share some kind of a work history, I said sure at first. And then I gave it some thought and I said, what are you going to talk about? Because I really didn't think I had much of a unique work history. I started out and I've worked at the mines that closed down. I worked at the paper mill in Newton Falls briefly, and then I wound up spending roughly 31 and a half years in the post office and retired. But I said, well, that's kind of a normal job. So I sat and I thought, and I said, oh, I know what I'll do. I grew up in the Adirondacks at a time where young kids could get jobs. Work was plentiful in the early 60s, even down in St. Lawrence County where I live now. And my father worked at J&L, and now that I realize it, but back then I didn't know, they didn't have money to give me extra if you wanted to go and get a soda or go to wherever, get a candy bar after school. So I started scrambling for odd jobs when I was like probably 12, 13 years old, and I had older school teachers that were widows and different things. I raked lawns, and I shoveled snow, and I mowed grass, and I did all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, I found out that when you turned 14, you could get working papers, and you could get a regular job. You could get a regular paycheck. I said, hey, this sounds like a good deal. Well, there was a general store in Star Lake at the time. It was called Tier's Store. And they periodically hired young kids, mostly to work in the summer because there was a lot of summer people then. So I went to the school and I got my working papers. And boom, I go to the store. The manager of the store, he interviewed me, and they hired me. And if I'm not mistaken, on a good week, I might have made about $14, $15, which was a lot of money. And they trained me to stock the shelves, help back where the meat cutter was, take out the empty bottles. They gave 2 cents, I think, for bottles back then and all this. And after I'd worked a while, they said, well, we're going to show you how to work on a counter. So here's this 14-year-old boy, and he's standing at the counter. And I remember the counter was really high like this. And I'm looking out at all these people, and I know some of them by sight, but they're all old people, and scares the hell out of you. And had a great big mammoth McCaskey cash register. Had buttons as big as quarters. You had to really push them down to get it to, and then the drawer would come out like this. They showed me how to do it. I still remember they taught me how to make change. A lot of kids in stores today can't make change. You start from the smallest, you go to the biggest, and you count it back into their hand. The manager of the store was really, really a stickler on that stuff. So he trained me all this, right? And there was people at that time that would come in and they would buy their groceries and they wouldn't pay for them. They would pay the following week or at the end of the month. So you wrote everything down on a tablet. And the store was very narrow, very, very narrow. And they had these metal shopping carts with metal wheels that they would push down. People would put the groceries in. They would bring them up to the counter, and you had to take each one, and you wrote down what it was, and you wrote down the amount. And then when they were gone, you kept these tablets. They took them down back, and they totaled them up, and they had the bill ready for the people. Everything's going fine. I've done this job for a few days. Hey, I think this is a great thing. Everybody's coming in. I'm writing everything down. Man and woman come in. Little short woman. Big, quiet, dignified man. He's walking around the store and never says a thing. Doesn't smile at anybody. She's just walking around picking up stuff, and she fills the cart up. She brings it up to me. She puts it on the counter. I'm filling it out. I filled out the slip with the name that they told me. I'm writing down all the stuff, and I'm watching them as they go around. Well, at that time, they had ice cream coolers. Some of us in here remember them. They had the big flip-top lids, and they had cardboard containers that just scooped out the ice cream, and you had the little novelties that you could buy. Fudgesicles were a nickel back then. Ice cream sandwiches were a dime, okay? So I'm watching these two people, and they bring in stuff up. The guy goes over, and he opens up the thing. He reaches down in there. He gets a fudgesicle out. He peels the fudgesicle off. He's walking around the store, just as unconcerned as anything. He's eating the fudgesicle. I write down 5 cents, fudgesicle. Woman comes up. She brings stuff onto the counter. She sets it there. They're buying a lot of stuff. A lot of groceries. Pretty soon, I see him go over and get a second fudgesicle. I write down 5 cents for the second fudgesicle. The other guy comes up, the owner's son, or the manager's son, rather, boxing up the groceries, and they're carrying them out to his car, and they're talking to him and everything, and I'm finishing up tabulating all the stuff that they've got, and I put it over in a thing where it goes down back. Everything is fine. Manager comes later on, he gets the bills that accumulated during the day, and he takes them down back, and I'm waiting on customers and doing stuff. All of a sudden, he comes back up through the back aisle to the counter, and I swear to God, he's a foot off the floor. He said, "My God, Butch, do you know what you did?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Do you know who that last customer was that you waited on?" I said, "Yeah, I think that was Mr. Schuler." He said, "Do you know who Mr. Schuler was or is?" I said, "No." He said, "You can't charge him 5 cents for those fudgesicles. He's a millionaire." I said, "What do you mean he's a millionaire?" He says, "He owns Schuler's Potato Chips. He owns Streeter Lake. He owns 5,000 acres in the Adirondack Park." It wasn't the Adirondack Park then. I said, "Can't prove it by me." I said, "I got to pay 5 cents for the fudgesicles." He said, "Don't ever charge him 5 cents for the fudgesicles." I said, "Okay." So I didn't charge him for any more fudgesicles, but as far as I was concerned, he had to pay, right? But back then you didn't. And I got to thinking about that store again, and I said, something else had happened. The manager passed away, and his son took his place. His son was in the 60s, dirt track racing, stock cars. He used to take off on a Saturday afternoon. They would head to Fonda down by Utica. They would go to Burlington, I think it was, somewhere up in Vermont. He had myself, an older woman, who to me she was ancient, but she probably wasn't that old. I mean, when you're 14, everybody looks old. And he would leave the keys with us because he wasn't coming back until Sunday afternoon or Sunday night. Well, back then, the Sunday papers would come in. And it wasn't like the paper today that you get in a tube and it's all together. You got these great big bundles. They threw them on the front porch of the store like at 3 o'clock in the morning. We had to grab the bundles, take them in the store, and there was like part A, B, C, D, E, F, and you had to put them all out there, and then you go, all the way down through them, put them together. Because the first thing that store opened up at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, people were there. They wanted their Sunday paper, right? So we show up, and here's the woman that works with us, and she's right in a mild panic. I mean, like, she's just about ready to have an apoplectic fit. "I don't have the key. Willie didn't leave us the key." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, how can we get in? We can't open the store. We can't do the papers. Oh, my God, what's going to happen?" The other guy and I looked at each other, and Bruce looked at me. I looked at Bruce, and we said, "Leona, don't worry. We got it taken care of." "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Just stay right here on the front porch. It's okay." Round the back of the store we go, over to the back storeroom door. There was like a storage shed, and there's a wooden ladder there. Bruce and I grabbed the wooden ladder, and we go out back of the store, and one side of the store is like these old Western buildings that had a fake wall, and it was a flat roof. You throw the ladder on the flat roof, and up I go, boom, 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 up the ladder. And there's windows all the way down the side of it, and they were single-pane wooden windows. A good wind, they go like this, right? Because the building was very old. Bruce and I wandered all through the store. The upstairs was all kinds of clothes and knickknacks and household items and everything. They never locked the windows. Windows just rattled. Push your fingers up like that, slide the window up. Bruce climbs in, I climb in. Downstairs we go. We walk up to the front door and we wave at Leona. We're inside. And her eyes get big like this, and she says, "My God, how are you in there? Why are you in there?" We opened up the door. She says, "How did you do that?" Bruce says, "You really don't want to know, Leona. Just don't worry about it." We put all the papers out on the thing, and we put them all together. 8 o'clock came, we opened up the door, and everything was fine. Willie comes back Sunday. "How the hell did you get open?" he says. "I got the keys in my pocket." "Don't worry, Willie, you might want to think about going up and locking up the windows." That was it. Thank you.